Here we have it, 5.5 mile loop through at least 8 properties at a leisurely, I don't know, 25-30 minute mile. Let's rewind. And it all starts at this rather nondescript trailhead for the Dorwart Preserve. Let's get to it. The trail starts along this unnamed stream that comes from Hanson's Pond. The Dorwart Preserve connects directly to the Lions Memorial Park for a total of 125 acres and has about 1.25 miles of trails. This section here, the trail map calls the River of Rocks. Of course, you can't quite capture it on camera, but there are quite a few. The trail contains a section of an old cart path that was a local shortcut back in its day. It also has the remains of an early American car. We've now entered into Mansfield Hollow. What do we have here? I can only assume that that is for the Nipmuc South trail race that happened, I don't know, 3 weeks ago or so. Don't want anybody taking wrong turns. And here we come to the Blue Blaze Nipmuc and our first view of the Warren Pony Truss Bridge over the Fenton River. These bridges were built in 1901 by the Berlin Construction Company, and oh, hello, little fella. Safe travels. This is the northern bridge that was located over the Willimantic River, I believe, and then there's a southern one about 3/4 of a mile back that way. That was over the Mount Hope River. This section of the Nipmuc's pretty well grown over. Hi. How are you?
Hot and sweaty.
Yeah, yep. This section of the Nipmuc Trail north of Route 89 is about 1 1/3 miles. And crosses these 2 bridges. Yeah, if we were a little bit higher, oh right, perfect, you'd be able to see Mansfield Hollow. And we continue on the Nipmuc until we reach Chaffeeville Road, which we cross into 50-foot Rock Preserve, which is just a mile away. 50-foot Cliff Preserve is a town park of Mansfield, and you can park where I just crossed at Chaffeeville or behind the Mansfield Historical Society on 195. This here is usually a flowing set of cascades after a good rain. This section, like many others on the Nipmuc, has lots of rocks and roots to step around as you work your way up around the namesake, but you're rewarded with this view. But let's see if the other ones does it a little more justice. The cliff got its name more for alliteration purposes than topographical accuracy. It's over 100 feet tall, and it's also home to the Ishmael Rosas Memorial. He was a young Mansfield resident who passed away at the age of 21. Just behind 50-Foot Preserve is the junction for the east and west sections of the Nipmuc. This section heads towards the western terminus by Wolf Rock, and this is the eastern section where we came from that ends at Mansfield Hollow. But we will continue north towards Route 44. Bittersweet, bittersweet, bittersweet. Daisy, daisy, daisy. And now we come to the ruins of the Chaffeeville Silk Mill. We are walking on part of it now. As you can see. And you can't quite see it over there, but there is another section. As we head over there, I can tell you that Orwell Chaffee, the namesake of the mill, started his in 1842 in place of the old Conant and Company mill that began in the 1830s. He operated here with the name Orwell's and Sons Silk Company until 1860. In 1860, the mill burned down, likely due to arson. On September 12, 1860, Robert P. Barrows described what happened to the mill in a letter to his brother Lucius. He said, "Mr. Chaffee's silk factory was burned last week while nearly all hands were at a camp meeting, which was held about a mile south of Willimantic. His loss is supposed to be about $12,000. There were no persons in the factory at work that day." And so he built this much bigger one around 1863. It's hard to give a sense of scale when it's surrounded by patches of poison ivy, but this is easily 8 to 12 feet tall, I'd guess, and easily 100 feet long. The mill, which looked something like this, operated under Orwell or his brother's ownership until around 1902. From there, I think it lay dormant for a number of years before it was purchased by Alfred Oden, who was a postmaster and operator of the general store in Mansfield. He operated as a canning factory for about 8 years until the mill was torn down, I think in 1920. And so we come to Chaffeeville Road, which we cross and reach both the town property of Coney Rock as well as the Joshua's Trust property. We're over 4 miles in, and it's uphill, uphill, uphill. Uphill, uphill. We leave the town property behind us and we enter the Joshua's Trust property, and we come to the second overlook of our loop hike. obviously much more expansive in the winter. This one has a bench in memory of Virginia Ferguson, the first Joshua's Trust office volunteer. There's also this stone pillar, which is for the National Society of Professional Surveyors Foundation Final Point, 2010. So we head down the other side of Coney Rock on the Chapin Trail to the Mullane Trail, which heads toward the Proposal Rock property. And that brings us to the home stretch of our loop. If you want to see a little bit more detailed version of the two Joshua's Trust properties, I'll put a link to the Joshua's Trust Mansfield movie that I made. We just came down the Mullane Trail to the old road, and this should be the last leg, although this looks like pure tick country. So here we have it, 5.5 mile loop through at least 8 properties at a leisurely, I don't know, 25-30 minute mile. Let's rewind.